Tonight on Miracle Cures. At age 4, Sarah Del Antonia lost her feet in a tragic lawnmower accident.
He told us, I will never forget it, your daughter, I don't think will ever walk again.
Now, her only hope is a pair of revolutionary prosthetics. When Elaine Della was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis, she refused to accept her fate.
I was determined I was going to beat this thing.
What she discovered will astound you.
My tingling was gone, my weakness was gone, my fatigue was gone.
Tucker was a little blind horse saved from the slaughterhouse.
He was lying just caked with mud. I couldn't let him go. I couldn't let him die.
Can an innovative surgical procedure give this young horse the gift of sight? 10-year-old Travis Parker suffered from a rare disease that kept him trapped indoors.
Too much sun could actually kill Travis.
Now a space-age suit from NASA could be just the miracle Travis has been hoping for. All this tonight on Miracle Cures. There's an old saying that goes, it's a cure for what ails you, and tonight we'll discover just how true that is. Hello, I'm Della Reese, and welcome to Miracle Cures. It can be something as simple as a bowl of chicken soup, or as complex as a pair of silicone feet for a high school cheerleader. Tonight, we'll bring you miraculous stories of individuals who have triumphed over their illnesses while discovering incredible new treatments for what ailed them. We begin in Fort Scott, Kansas, when Cleta Del Antonia decided to mow her lawn. She never dreamed that a simple chore would change her daughter's life forever.
When Sarah was a real little girl, she was always mischievous, one that loved to get a prank over on you. And her thing when she was real tiny, she loved to scare you.
But it was a simple childhood prank that turned a spring day into a tragic nightmare. It was a day that would haunt Cleta Del Antonia for the rest of her life.
My husband had told us when he got off work that evening that we would go out to the park to play, but he was going to mow the lawn first. So I told the kids that instead of waiting for Daddy to get home, we'd have more time at the park if I went ahead and mowed. So kids thought this was great.
Cleta brought out the riding lawnmower and told Sarah to play on the porch. In an attempt to scare her mother, Sarah snuck off the porch and went running toward the mower. It was an act that set off a frightening chain of events.
I heard this noise, and I thought that I'd hit a stick, and it just kept a clatter, and I thought, well, the stick must have gotten wound up in there. And I saw Sarah laying over on the ground.
Cleta hurried to her daughter's side.
I saw she had blood on her, and I couldn't imagine why, that she had all this blood on her. I realized at this point that it was actually my daughter that I had hit with the mower. I began wiping her legs off, and I saw that there was no feet on her. And she was bleeding so bad, I didn't think she would live.
Cleta knew there was no time to lose. She frantically rushed to her car, driving Sarah to the hospital herself.
I held her both legs, off and on with one hand, trying to keep the bleeding down. And when we got about halfway to the hospital, she rolled these big blue eyes of hers up at me. And she just said, "Mommy, am I gonna die?" And it was really hard for me to tell her, "No, you're not going to die." Because in my own heart, I knew there was a good chance that she might die.
When we returned,
the doctors told me that her feet had been chopped off clean. Why, Lord? Why does that have to happen to a 4-year-old?
When a lawnmower blade severed 4-year-old Sarah Del Antonia's feet, her mother frantically rushed her to the hospital. Cleta feared for her daughter's life and knew that she was in desperate need of a miracle. Within minutes, Cleta arrived at Mercy Hospital. Once inside, the emergency room staff worked feverishly to stabilize little Sarah.
You need some blood tubing on it too? Okay, she's still breathing. Come on, let's move.
I knew she was hurt bad, but I was wanting for it to go in there and just have the doctor say, Cleta, she's hurt, but she's not hurt as bad as what you think. That wasn't the case.
The doctors told Cleta that Sarah's injuries were so severe that she would have to be life-flighted to Kansas University Medical Center in Kansas City. Cleta called her husband Bill with the tragic news. He raced to the hospital afraid of what he might find.
When I first saw her laying there, the first thing that came was, why, Lord? Why does this have to happen to a 4-year-old? The doctors told me that her feet had been chopped off clean, completely. And I was in total shock.
At Kansas University Medical Center, Sarah underwent immediate surgery.
And I was sitting there wondering, why aren't they coming out here and telling me something? And I prayed so much, just let this child live. And please let her be a kid again.
In a grueling 18-hour surgery, the doctors attempted an innovative procedure to avoid amputating Sarah's legs below the knees. By taking some muscle from her back and transferring it to her damaged limbs, they were able to salvage Sarah's ankles and heels.
When the doctor came out of the surgery room, he had such a solemn look on his face. And I knew that the news wasn't going to be good. And he told us, I will never forget it. He looked at Bill and I and he goes, your daughter, I don't think will ever walk again. I thought, my God, she's 4 years old.
It was scary to the point of where now we had a little girl sitting here that previously could walk, and now she can't walk, and now what are we going to do? Will she ever be able to walk again?
Only Sarah could answer that question. After a month in the hospital, this tenacious young girl was back at home, determined to prove the doctors wrong.
I carried her into the bathroom, and so she come out just screaming, and Mama, come here, come here. So I went in, I thought, what's wrong? So when I got there, she says, I can walk, Mama. And I just broke down crying. Sarah, you can't walk. Mommy, I can walk. And it was bad, but she was walking.
I was so proud of her that day, I just about couldn't stand it. She's sitting on the floor, looks up at me like, who cares, Dad? I don't care if I was injured. There's nobody going to stop me from walking. I still have feet.
The road toward recovery was long and painful, but Sarah refused to give up. Only 6 months after the accident, the doctor said that she was ready to try prosthetics.
And at this time, they had these real tall fiberglass prosthetics, and they weighed more than what she did. She would cry, and she would tell me, Mommy, they hurt so bad. I don't want to wear she called them boots. I don't want to wear my boots, Mama.
I don't want this girl ruined. This girl is energetic. She's determined to walk. I don't care if I have to go to the ends of the earth. I need to find somebody who can come up with an innovative idea.
The Della Antonias found that somebody. His name was Doyle Black of Hanger Prosthetics and Orthotics.
I felt that Sarah was a little girl that needed all the help she could get. I was willing to go that extra mile to make sure that she got what she needed.
Doyle told us at this point that he had an idea for a silicone prosthetic.
Silicone was a new challenge to us because at that time a silicone foot had never been made. There was no better reason for us to try it than when Sarah came in.
Using a special substance called alginate, Doyle cast a mold of Sarah's remaining limbs. It was from this mold that he created a very special pair of silicone feet.
When I brought the prosthesis into her, Her eyes got as big as silver dollars, and she looked at him, and she looked at her mom and just grinned. She says, "Mom, I like these. I want these, Mom. Can I have these, Mom?"
When he first got the prosthetics done and she put them on, it did as much, I think, for her ego as it did mine. Because she would say, "Mommy, I couldn't run. I couldn't run in my feet, Mommy. Look at my feet." And she never called them boots. She actually called them feet.
It was very touching that we were able to give her back what was taken away from her.
Over the years, Sarah has returned to Doyle to get new feet each time she grew. As a teenager, Sarah has been able to adapt to life like any other 16-year-old.
There's not anything I can't do with my feet. I mean, I run, I jog, I ride a bike, I do everything. There's not really anything I can't do.
I was really worried about the boyfriends, you know, if she would have boyfriends or not. And now then it's just been quite the opposite. The phone rings too often in my estimation.
I date as many guys as anybody else, and if not more. No, I'm kidding. Oh, that was hilarious.
Sarah knew that as a teenager, there was yet another mountain she wanted to climb.
I've always wanted to be a cheerleader since I was little bitty. Even when I was little, for Halloween every year, I'd be a little cheerleader, you know.
When Sarah announced that she really wanted to become a cheerleader and she was going to try out, we were shocked. I was really concerned at that point. She walks, yes. She runs, yes. But can we really do the jumps? Can we really compete with somebody at that point?
I went ahead and tried out, and I was really nervous because there is a lot of people that try out.
On tryout day, Cleta was waiting at the school for Sarah to tell her the news.
Sarah was really crying, and I looked at her and I put my arm around her, and I said, "Sarah, it's okay." And she goes, "Mama, I'm crying because I made it." She goes, "I'm crying because I'm happy." She says, "I'm a cheerleader, Mom. I'm finally a cheerleader."
The first time I saw Sarah cheerleading, it choked me up. I could not believe that Daddy's little girl was out there cheerleading. She was bouncing, she was running up and down the court. We could not tell the difference between Sarah and the other cheerleaders. Sarah was just Sarah. I mean, she was one of the girls. She was part of the action. There she was. Just a feeling you can't describe when you see a girl that you've come so far with. It's breathtaking. These feet have actually helped me start to believe that, you know, there must be a power somewhere. These feet came from God, the idea did, but Doyle Black, perhaps through God, worked a miracle.
When I see Sarah at the games, I am so proud of her. All of her accomplishments and everything that she has done. There's a part of me that just wants to stand up and scream to the crowd, "That's my daughter."
When we return,
she brought home some stuff and she says, "Well, I'm going to start the injections. You're a guinea pig here. There's no one monitoring this."
not everyone faced with a devastating illness becomes obsessed with finding a cure. When fate came calling for Elaine Della of Stanwood, Washington, she refused to take the diagnosis lying down. It's an inspiring story of one woman's faith and perseverance, a personal journey that may someday affect you or someone you love. Elaine Della has never taken no for an answer. Even as a young girl growing up on an isolated Montana ranch, she was as tough as nails.
I've always been a person that, you tell me I can't do something, I'm going to do it.
In 1979, Elaine married Marvin Della. It was a storybook marriage. The couple was blessed with a beautiful baby girl, and it wasn't long before they were expecting their second child. What happened next would turn Elaine's world upside down.
During my pregnancy, I'd wake up in the middle of the night and I couldn't move my left leg. The doctor said, well, it's probably just the way the baby's sitting. It's probably hit on a nerve.
Elaine gave birth to a son, But her joy was short-lived when she was suddenly overwhelmed with fatigue.
Got to the point where she would start feeling numbness and actual loss of limb use. And it scared us.
A couple times I'd wake up in the middle of the night, and my son was crying. I'd go to throw my legs over the side of the bed and get up, and I just fell flat on my face.
She's that young, she's that strong, she's in that good a shape. What could this be?
Elaine went to one doctor after another and was eventually diagnosed with multiple sclerosis. It was devastating news, but it was nothing compared to what happened next.
His reply to me was, "There's nothing we can do for you. You eat good and get your sleep."
Things only got worse when the couple learned that MS is not only debilitating, it can eventually be fatal.
Multiple sclerosis is a disease of the central nervous system. Then as time goes on, generally it progresses to the point where you have permanent disability. Maybe first your legs, maybe you end up having to use a cane and then a front wheel walker and then a wheelchair. There is no cure for MS. There is really nothing they can do to even stop the symptoms.
Here's my wife, Elaine, an energetic individual who's going to have her youth just stolen from her by a disease.
Elaine realized that her life had changed forever, but true to her nature, she wasn't about to take the diagnosis lying down.
I've just never been that kind of a person to just roll over and say, okay, this is my destiny. And I was determined I was going to beat this thing.
But Elaine's condition was worsening. Her doctors had prescribed the standard medicines for treating MS, but the drugs weren't working.
I had contemplated, always wanting to go back to nursing school, but when you can't even write a complete check without your hand stopping, there was no way I'd be able to sit in a class and take notes or even have the energy to get to the class.
Elaine was frantic to find ways to reduce her symptoms, and she learned of a doctor who was treating MS patients with injections of vitamin B12 and adenosine phosphate. Although an unconventional treatment, Elaine was desperate for relief.
I started to feel better. I got to the point where I wasn't totally fatigued. I wasn't totally symptom-free. I still had a lot of numbness and tingling and pain, but I could actually accomplish things. In fact, I went on and decided, I'm probably good enough to go back and finish my nursing degree.
When Elaine graduated and landed her first nursing job, she tried to convince doctors to treat their MS patients with the same drugs that had eased her symptoms. When they dismissed her claims as nonsense, she set out to prove them wrong.
There would be books everywhere. We wouldn't be able to eat in the kitchen table, and I would have to beg her to just stop studying for a little bit, just make us some dinner, because she was so into it. She just had to find this.
It was sheer determination that drew Elaine back to the library again and again. She pored over countless medical journals, and then one day, something miraculous happened.
Every time I looked at the word histamine, I got these chills. And I didn't know anything about histamine. I was learning it as I was going.
Elaine felt that something was guiding her. Before she knew it, she had spent the whole day in the library. What she discovered would shake up the entire medical community.
What I learned in those 8 hours was that the people with MS don't make enough of this neurotransmitter called histamine. And so I realized if I just replaced the histamine, then that would be the answer.
Now, Elaine had to prove her theory. Against the wishes of her family, she began experimenting on herself with histamine injections.
She brought home some stuff and she says, well, I'm going to start the injections. Of course, my immediate concern was what? The injection what? What are these substances? Are they benign? What are they going to do? At that time, I said, what are the side effects? I want to know what the side effects are. You're a guinea pig here. There's no one monitoring this.
But Elaine refused to stop. For weeks, she injected the histamine, varying the dosage. And then one day, it happened.
My tingling was gone, my weakness was gone, my fatigue was gone. I could tolerate heat.
Come on.
Good job, bud.
I was feeling normal again, like I didn't have MS.
We were seeing less in fatigue. We were seeing more energy. I was excited that I was getting my wife back.
Elaine had battled her MS symptoms and won. and now she was ready to share her treatment with the medical community. Unfortunately, she found that the news of her discovery fell on deaf ears.
He said, "Are you a scientist?" And I said, "No." He said, "Are you a doctor?" And I said, "No, I'm a nurse who has MS, and I want to know if you're doing any research." Phone went dead. I never got another answer. He just hung up when he found out I was just a nurse. At times I would think to myself, you know, you are just a nurse. If there really was something to this, Elaine, somebody would be doing something with it.
Reports of Elaine's treatment leaked out, spreading like wildfire to other MS sufferers who encouraged her not to give up.
The phone would ring. There'd be somebody I didn't know who had MS and said, "I'm hearing you're doing this research on MS." And it was just kind of like, okay, God, I'll just keep trying.
Elaine continued to refine her formula. She knew that histamine injections were unrealistic for the thousands of people suffering from multiple sclerosis. So she began looking for someone who could put her compound into a transdermal patch.
A patch like that would slowly release the medication through the skin.
It was exactly the kind of challenge that appealed to pharmacist Judy Richardson.
I came in a lot of times on Sunday afternoons when the store was closed, or I did work at home reading the research, looking for what kind of a dose I wanted to decide on.
Working from Elaine's notes, Judy eventually came up with a cream that could easily be applied to the patch.
We want to have it nice and creamy so that it'll stay on the patch.
And I put it on, and a few hours later I'd get symptoms, and I told her, "No, this isn't right. We need to add a little more of this or a little more of that."
Finally, they got it right.
I could do anything I wanted to do. I could go with the family wherever they wanted to go. I was ecstatic, and I wanted to get this out to other people.
Elaine convinced a local doctor to try her treatment on his MS patients. The results were astounding. Next stop, the drug companies. Elaine wanted to share her discovery with the world.
And I just gave them all my research. I wasn't looking for any compensation or anything. I just wanted somebody to please do the study, get this medication out available to people. And they didn't want to do it because they didn't think there was any money in it for them. They didn't believe it was patentable.
But once again, Elaine Delac refused to give up. If the big companies wouldn't help her, she'd do it herself. First, she had to come up with a name.
I just thought of, well, pro, and then caring. And I thought, just drop the G. Made it Pro-Karen.
And then Elaine got the break she'd been looking for. A local news program profiled Elaine and her struggle to make Pro-Karen available to all MS sufferers. The floodgates were opened.
We started Pro-Karen August 3rd. We will never forget it. Okay, let's try our bending and stretching. Just bend.
Larry McCarthy had struggled against MS for 37 years, spending most of his days in a wheelchair or in bed. Desperate for anything that might help her husband, Linda convinced his doctor to let Larry try Pro-Karen.
By the end of the second week, he says there is no numbness in his leg. All the numbness has gone. The left side is beginning to come alive. And he can make himself understood now. He still goes to speech therapy, but he has a voice. Shall we try to get you in to see the kids' apartment or condo this weekend?
I would like to.
Yes.
Very much.
Dr. George Gilson of the Tahoma Clinic has been tracking Larry's progress since he started using Pro-Karen.
The results for Larry have been quite startling. He was able to use his left hand, he was able to scratch his head, he was able to turn over in bed, he was sleeping soundly through the night. It was night and day for Larry.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, you did it!
Does it work? Does it improve the level of functioning in a certain percentage of people? Yes, it does. Out of 100 people that you give it to the best of our ability, 2/3 of the people will have some response to it.
You might try that high tape.
For Elaine, hearing how Pro-Karen has helped so many people is a dream come true.
You just can't describe it. You just overwhelming joy, happiness. I just kind of relive the feeling of getting my life back as they tell me their experiences.
Word of Procarin's benefits spread quickly across the country. Although not FDA approved, a recent count showed nearly 600 doctors were prescribing Procarin, and more than 500 pharmacies were compounding it.
I want everybody to have it. I want people to have Procarin to control their symptoms. And I believe if I can get the medical community to look at Procarin and to look at the theory that it's based on, I know they can find the cure.
But Elaine Della will always be remembered for what she's already accomplished.
Elaine is very much an angel. She has had so much tenacity to stick with this. We have been given our life back today.
As Elaine looks back on her years of struggle, she believes she was never alone.
I knew that day that was God telling me that this was my purpose. You know, I just can't say enough. God has really touched me, and I'm finally able to do what He wanted me to do.
When we return,
cataract surgery in horses is a fairly rare procedure.
This was a gamble, but we were willing to take this gamble.
nothing tugs at the heartstrings like a story of an animal in need. When a little horse named Tucker was destined for the slaughterhouse, the residents of Denver, Colorado, pulled together to save the young colt's life. It's a Cinderella story with a most unexpected ending.
People love horses. It seems like they're almost a symbol of the frontier. They run wild and free, which is something we all want to do.
It was Sandy Calvin's love and passion for horses that led her to one special little horse, destined for an unspeakable fate.
A friend of mine called me. She was at the slaughter yard with her cell phone and said, "I have just seen the cutest horse I've ever seen, and you need to get down here."
Sandy rushed to the slaughter yard.
You know, one would think that a slaughter horse is only this old, very decrepit, perhaps lame horse. Unfortunately, that is not the case. This was a 4-month-old horse that had its entire life in front of him. He was lying just caked with mud, just covered, and just lying pretty lifelessly. He lifted up his head and he looked at me, and our eyes connected, and I couldn't let him go. I couldn't let him die.
Sandy negotiated with the slaughterhouse and paid by the pound for the frightened young thoroughbred. She had saved his life, but the colt's problems were far from over.
I started to notice that his eyes would turn a shade of blue if the light hit them a certain way.
Sandy soon realized that the horse was blind. He would require special care that she couldn't provide. She contacted the Colorado Horse Rescue, who agreed to take him. The last thing she did was name him Tucker.
I hugged him goodbye, and I knew for some reason that he was different and that something special was going to happen to him.
Tucker was transported to the Colorado Horse Rescue, a nonprofit organization dedicated to both the rehabilitation and adoption of unwanted horses.
It was really sad to see little Tucker because he was just so petrified. He had no idea where he was, why he was there. So we had to actually go around in the stall and bang on the stall gate and on the walls so that he knew where he was so that he wasn't hurting himself.
And I think the fact that he was so young made him very special to everybody here at the Colorado Horse Rescue.
Knowing it would be very difficult to find a home for a blind horse, Tucker's caretakers were determined to try and help.
To find somebody who has enough time, who has enough energy to care for a horse like that could really be a problem. A lot of horses in Tucker's situation don't ever make it.
Hoping for a miracle, they called a doctor to see if anything could be done. Dr. Cynthia Powell found that Tucker's blindness was caused by cataracts. But there was a glimmer of hope. She felt that there was a slight chance that a groundbreaking operation could restore his sight.
Cataract surgery in horses is a fairly rare procedure.
This was a gamble, but we were willing to take this gamble.
But time was running out. Dr. Powell warned that the longer they waited, the greater the chance that Tucker would be blind forever.
We didn't know if we had the money for this kind of surgery. We didn't know if we could raise that kind of money in time. We contacted television stations, radio stations, and newspapers in hopes that they would pick up this story.
When Linda Benzel, a reporter at Denver's Channel 4 News, heard about Tucker, she took a special interest.
Thoroughbreds were born to run. So imagine this is all you want to do is run. And when you're blind, you can't move. You're almost frozen because you can't see where to go.
I'm Linda Benzel with News 4.
Channel 4 began covering Tucker's journey, and his story touched so many hearts that it wasn't long before the money was raised. Now everyone just prayed that the surgery would be successful.
In any kind of surgery in a horse where you have to put them under general anesthesia, there's a risk that they could die under anesthesia for various reasons, or there are complications.
Well, News 4, of course, covered the surgery, and it was kind of finger or nail biting time.
We saw pictures of him as he was in surgery, so it was almost like we could be there and we could experience this with him. And we were all just waiting. What was going to happen? What was the outcome of this going to be?
That's great.
After several hours of intensive microscopic surgery, Dr. Powell waited anxiously for the results. When Tucker woke up, she saw that he was able to follow hand movements. It was then that she knew that the surgery had been a success.
You can't even imagine what the feeling is of taking a blind animal and then making them see within a matter of a few hours.
When I first saw him, and I could see that he could follow shadows with his eyes, that he could follow movement. I can't tell you how that felt. It was amazing. It made your heart just swell with pride and excitement because you knew you'd been a part of something really tremendous.
He's so full of energy now because he can see he wants to go there now.
As hard as it was, everyone knew their job was done. The time had come to try and find a new home for their beloved Tucker.
It was around Christmas time, and we'd done the story on Tucker saying, at one time or another, everyone has wanted a pony for Christmas. Here's a pony that needs a home for Christmas.
Soon, the Colorado Horse Rescue was flooded with dozens of offers to adopt Tucker. There was one that seemed perfect.
The assignment editor called me at home that night and said, "You won't believe who's called." And I said, "Who?" "Monty Roberts. He wants to adopt Tucker." "Oh, okay, I saw the movie The Horse Whisperer."
Monty Roberts is very well known, so having him interested was another great tribute to Tucker in his run of luck, so to speak, that, now he's got another real good chance in life.
The day Tucker left the farm, all of his friends turned out to say goodbye, including Sandy Calvin, who started Tucker on his miraculous journey.
I put my arms around him and I laid my head against him, just like we had done the very first time that I saw him. And he knew, and it was almost like there was this thank you.
Tucker moved across the West to his new home, Flag is Up Farms in California, where he began his new life.
This little horse who needed a cure was given a miracle.
It's like a Disney movie. It went from the worst of places to the best of places. Who knows what the future will hold?
When we return,
a lot of kids would make fun of him because he can't go outside.
Travis he's the light of my life, and I can't imagine Travis not making it.
Can you imagine never being able to leave your home when the sun was out, never feeling its warmth on your face as you gazed toward the sky? Well, for 10-year-old Travis Parker of Old Fort, North Carolina, the sun not only robs him of his freedom, it could very well take his life.
And I've seen him, just standing there waiting. It's like being stalked, this disease.
He looked really sad and like he wanted to just go out.
When you see a child sitting back, looking at other children, it tears your heart out.
I was very sad that he couldn't come out. He was looking out of the window and he was crying.
Being alone is nothing new for 10-year-old Travis Parker. Since he was born, he's been waging a war against a rare disease as well as his loneliness.
Travis was my first child. He was born on Christmas Eve, and it's just unbelievable. It's an indescribable feeling when you hold your first child for the first time. He was a beautiful baby.
But it was only 10 days after the Parkers brought their new baby home that Travis came down with a mysterious illness.
His liver was failing, his kidneys were failing. They said, well, he's got a viral pneumonia, and they did some testing and found out that the virus had gotten into his spinal cord and gone to his brain.
The doctors scrambled to stabilize the infant, but Travis's condition only worsened. The Parkers were told that their son only had a 10% chance of survival.
They told us to go ahead and make preparations that he couldn't survive. They said it's all in God's hands. They said we've done all we could do.
Travis is he's the light of my life, and I can't imagine Travis not making it.
But one morning, the Parkers were awakened by the sounds of healthy cries. It seemed that as quickly as Travis had taken ill, he suddenly got better. The doctor said it was nothing short of a miracle.
His doctor took a picture of us as a family and wrote "The Miracle Baby," and he put it up on his little bulletin board in the intensive care.
The Parkers finally brought Travis home. But it wasn't long before they found themselves in need of another miracle.
He sat up and did all the normal things a kid would do, except that he would scratch himself. It seemed like the more he was outside, the more he would scratch. I started seeing blisters appearing, and it just didn't heal. The dermatologist said, there's this disease that I've never seen. There's less than 150 reported cases of it ever in the history of mankind.
His diagnosis was porphyria. Travis is missing a very important enzyme, and what happens when you're missing that enzyme is that you get an accumulation of something called porphyrin. When porphyrin is deposited in the skin, it can cause great damage when they're exposed to sunlight. There's no real cure for it. Seconds in the sunlight can cause damage.
Your skin's just the first thing that happens. It can affect your heart, your liver, your kidneys. Too much sun could actually kill Travis. It turned our world completely upside down. From a baby on, he never went out.
He can walk outside in the sunlight, and in a matter of a few minutes, his little hands would be bubbled up, or if you put them in grease.
It looked like he'd been burnt with cigarettes or literally, beaten or something terrible.
As Travis got older, his life became even more difficult. The other kids were quick to ridicule, deserting Travis for the fresh air and the sunshine.
A lot of kids would call him names and make fun of him because he can't go outside.
I watched him for 9.5 years, having to look through the windows and him crying, saying, "Dad, I wish the sun would go away. I wish he'd just fall out of the sky."
Even at school, Travis found little relief from his loneliness. At recess, he was forced to stay inside, watching the other kids play, a constant reminder of just how different he was.
I'm just saying, please let me go outside. I want to go outside and play with my friends. I've got friends,
It wasn't until one day when Teresa was watching a television program that she learned that there might be hope for Travis.
I was watching a couple of talk shows, and there was a little girl on the show that was wearing a suit made by NASA.
Teresa contacted the show and was directed to a woman named Sarah Moody. Sarah knew all too well the difficult lives these children and their families were living. Her 10-year-old nephew, Stevie, was suffering from an equally rare disease that prevented his body from cooling itself.
Stevie was born without sweat glands. My first thought was NASA. If NASA can put a man on the moon, NASA could do something to help Stevie.
Sarah worked with NASA to develop a special suit that would cool her nephew's body. Since that time, she has created the HED Foundation, a nonprofit organization that works closely with NASA to develop suits for children with a wide variety of sun-related illnesses.
It was the same technology our astronauts used in space. And it was made to where the children could be free of any kind of UV ray, sunlight going to their skin.
I found out about this suit and found out it cost $2,000. We didn't have $2,000 we could just pull out of our pocket. So I thought and thought, there's got to be a way to get this money.
Teresa was on a mission. She rallied together the entire community. She even enlisted the help of Travis's 3rd grade class.
I went to the kids and I said, there's a suit out there that would let Travis go out into the sun. I want you to write to NASA to help us get this suit and ask them to please help me get Travis the suit.
I wrote that he should get the spacesuit because he's a really nice person and he should be able to go outside.
They came up with everything from he's white as a ghost to he needs to come and play with my dog and I want him to go to the fair, and it was really, really touching the way the kids, they did a wonderful job.
The outpouring of the entire community was staggering. A benefit was held in Travis's honor.
Just the day of the benefit alone, we raised $1,875, not counting the change.
Finally, Travis's wait was over. On August the 9th, 1999, Sarah Moody brought Travis his special suit. It was a day filled with anticipation, a day that would change Travis's life forever.
We went in and Travis was kind of looking at it, and Sarah said, well, how do you feel? And he said, well, I feel kind of weird, you know. He looked really cool. It was Carolina blue, you know, that was cool. Half the town was probably there to see Travis get his suit. Everybody was kind of on edge. Everybody was like, well, what do you think he's going to look like?
He was one excited little boy, you know, because he couldn't wait to get out to take off to do his thing. And as soon as we get in on him, it's like you open up a curtain. And out the door he goes.
It felt to me like, you know, we just won the World Series. It thrilled me to death. I'd never been that thrilled.
All the kids were outside waiting, and when I went out, they all started clapping and everything. I was really, really happy.
You know, I was just hopping up and down, I'm jumping up and down and stuff, and he walks in the sun. My son is walking in, Travis is walking in the sun.
Travis was king for a day. He takes off walking there. The whole school was walking behind him, all the kids. You could see a little boy come alive.
Hey, Travis!
A lot of people would say he looked like a Power Ranger. I thought he looked like a ninja.
That was one of the most happiest times of my life. It's like he's been reborn again or something, you know. That's what I felt, you know.
Today, Travis can hardly wait to throw on his suit and run outside and play.
Now he can do everything that all my other friends can do because he's got this suit. He can ride bikes and he can get out and play basketball.
Good job. When I play basketball with him, it thrills me.
Oh, man, you got lucky out there.
He loves Michael Jordan, I guess. He's going to be just like him.
How's Michael Jordan shot there?
I can play more with my friends, and it's great to go outside and be a normal kid like everybody else. This suit's one of the greatest things that has happened to me.
In a way, this suit is a miracle cure. It's not a cure for his disease. It's not taking the disease away, but it's allowing him the opportunity to be a kid.
I've been caged up for 9 years. Now I'm free.
I'm thankful to have my little boy. He's my heart. He's a wonderful child, and I love him dearly. I love that boy. He's still my miracle baby. He's God's gift to me.
What would you do if there were no known medical cures for a disease or a tragedy that you were faced with? Well, the courageous individuals we've met tonight have shown us that through faith, innovation, and perseverance, there is always a chance for a miracle cure. I'm Della Reese. Good night.